I'm usually pretty level-headed and following the plan to a T, but there were a couple servings where I didn't have as much as you had planned. And then, as I was saying before we started recording, you had in the protocol, I think it was like
Hmm.
4 ounces of vodka or 4 ounces of red wine, and I may have turned that into 8 ounces of vodka and 8 ounces of red wine because I just couldn't sleep, and I was like,
Yeah.
so I don't think that helped at all because I just could feel things getting worse and worse, and yeah, it was very difficult. I try to, I think, anyways, that makes complete sense of what happened. But I do want to talk about the night show in a minute. But before I do, you've given tips on how to pump up, and one of them I did use there. But the other thing I've kind of learned through talking to you after that was like what muscle groups to pump up because there's only like so much blood that goes so much area.
Yeah.
So I want you to talk about that in a minute. But the one thing I remember was like, especially the morning show, I could not get a pump for the life of me.
Hmm.
And and I know it's not all about that, right? Because sometimes you have a guy who's like deconditioned and just thinks, oh, I could have looked better if this happened. Like that's not what I'm saying, right? But I definitely could tell, and I'll talk a little bit about the night after we talk about the pump up. But at the night, I got a much better pump, and I'll kind of talk about in between that in a minute. But can you talk a little bit about the strategy for like, pump up before someone goes on
Yeah.
stage?
And so, yeah, I think it's kind of evident, but the reason you didn't have the pump in the morning is because all that blood wasn't in the, or that water wasn't in the blood, so it
Right.
has, the pump is water in the muscle, basically. So
Right.
the areas that of that muscle have a higher, like the capillaries, blood vessels, those things are just loaded with a little extra water. If all that water is from the skin and there's nothing to take it there because the sodium also needs to go with it. But then, as far as pumping up, yeah, there's only so much blood in the body, and then that's what a pump is. And so, especially when you're dehydrated, when you're like a week post show and you're up 25 pounds, you can
Right.
you can get a pump everywhere. But when you're dehydrated for a show, there's just not enough blood to get a pump. So you need to be really strategic. And so you want to really think what muscles look better full and round and what muscle groups need to show separation. And so now your legs have to show separation. So much so that like half of bodybuilding now is just hamstring and glutes. Do you have lines there? And so if those are full, you lose that separation. You can picture like a Dennis James or any pro bodybuilder when they're in contest shape and their chest is pumped and it's huge, but it's not really defined. And so your back's another one, the infraspinatus, supraspinatus, teres major, teres minor, the rhomboids, all those little muscles, you need to see separation between all of them. When they're full and engorged, that like blurs into that
Smooths over.
separation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so do you really want to focus on, for most people, I think, never legs.
Right.
I think triceps pump up really well because they add fullness in a lot of poses, the side chest, the side tricep. When you're doing like a front relaxed, the outer head of your tricep is actually kind of the widest thing on your body.
Right.
So that kind of adds to the width. And I don't really like to do biceps. And the reason is it depends on the type of bicep you have. If you have a full long bicep, when you get a really big bicep pump, they kind of just look like a flat long blob. Now, if you have a really good peak, a pump is great, but that's probably like 10% of the population. I mean, there's not a lot of Arnold Schwarzeneggers walking around that had that.
Right.
So a lot of people don't look worse with a bicep pump. So, and then shoulders, you want those nice and round because it's not like there's deep lines in the shoulders. I mean, natural competitors do, but uh, tested competitor or untested competitors just aren't going to have that. So I like to basically stick to chest. Same thing. You're not, you, like super deep lines aren't as important as chest as much as you want that fullness, a special upper chest fullness, because that really creates like a whole look of fullness for the whole upper body. Triceps, delts, that's about it. So like 3 muscle groups. And if like if your chest is a real stand up body part and you have really weak lats, I'll recommend pumping up lats, but you have to be careful that you're really trying to focus on the lat because the same thing. And a good example of what is that is Nasser El Sonbaty. Because you look at him like look at the 1997 Mr. Olympia, and maybe when we publish this we can bring it up. His front double bicep is absolutely astounding. It's unbelievable. The 1997 Olympia. The thing is though, you'll notice like about 5 or 6 bee stings on each lat,
Mm.
which is from Nolotol or whatever they were using back then, Esicline. And so these lats were incredibly full, which looked absolutely astounding from the front, and he looked like he beat Dorian Yates. But then when you turn to the back, all that fullness is in the back is where what I was talking about. He lost all that separation, and so his back looks soft. It doesn't look separated. And it doesn't even look that much like bigger because, you know, when you lose that separation, that kind of hides the fullness. And so you have to be careful with that. You find the picture now.
Yeah, I got one. I'm not sure if this one will work, but I can always bounce off of it if it's not. I mean, is this this is him right here on the
Yeah,
left?
so you can see from the back, yeah. And if
I'm
you do
trying to
97 Nasser front bicep, so you'll see, yeah, I mean, he doesn't really gain much, but you can see even in his lats, the separation and stuff isn't as good as Dorian.
right
And when he, if you see, yeah, from the front
the
bicep, you'll,
bicep.
yeah,
Let's see what we got here. Would it be this
that's
one
like,
or
that's 95 or 96. It's, there you go, right there. That'll work.
this one?
Yeah, sure. Actually, if you go back out, that might be shopped a little bit, but and the one right next to it, yeah. If you can really see his lats, you can't. But you'll notice there's a little bit, like the right one is clearly larger, and there's a little bee sting there, kind of in the middle, and a couple spots. His right lat, the other lat, that away from your cursor.
Yeah,
Yeah, a couple of bumps, a little extra fullness that like his intercostals are kind of gone there. Well, like back then you could get Nolotil Nesta clean and stuff. And so that fullness looks amazing from the front. And he's actually gone on, he was, before he died, he went on record and discussed how he did that with the Nolotil or whatever. So I'm not saying anything new. But with that fullness, you lose that separation in the back. So that it's, like everything's like more involved than you think. You think this is a dumb meathead sport. And it's not like it's not rocket surgery, but it's a but there are a lot of things involved. Nothing's as just singular as it seems. Trying out for contests isn't just seeing how dehydrated you get, because you can, you do an MMA fight or you make weight for a powerlifting meet, you can lose 30 pounds of water in 24 hours.
right.
That's super dry. You're not winning a bodybuilding show. You just look small and dry. So. And that's the hardest thing in prep, is because your mind starts going crazy and you start thinking, you start losing the fact that I'm prepping for a contest, because it's so difficult and it's so severe and so extreme. Your brain starts thinking that the extreme is what the prep is. It's just how extreme can I go, not thinking like I'm landing a ship, I'm landing something on a boat here, that I need to be precise with it. I mean, it's difficult to land, but it's not just how hard can I land,
Right.
and that's the hard. I mean, because your brain, because it is so hard. You're suffering, you're starving, you're not sleeping, you're exhausted, and so it's easy to conflate the prep with that. What the prep is just how hard can you work or how much can you suffer, and it's
No,
hard to shake that. Yeah,
no, I was gonna say the water and sodium you're talking about makes complete sense, because it definitely isn't well, I'm sure it doesn't hurt the calories in the food to give me a little energy, but I just had a massive pile of baked fries that were just like doused in sodium and whatever, and I think I had like a diet pop and then a little bit of water on top of that, and it definitely, like, all of a sudden, just you go to the bathroom and it's like, oh,
yeah.
like this is how
All that
off I
water,
was.
yeah, all that water goes right in your bloodstream, and your veins are all popping out
Yep.
everywhere. Yeah,
Yep. And sometimes it's why, like, the guy after, like you said, the guy after the show, was just like, oh, I screwed it up because I look great. But then also, as most of them just don't look at those areas that are no longer dry
yeah.
or tight, because it's like they're looking at their bicep or something, or their
Yeah,
arms, and
that's
it's
the other
like,
hard thing, because there's a different look that wins contests versus what looks good on photo shoots.
right,
And what looks good in the gym or photo shoots is still being lean, being in contest shape, but just being absolutely full, like you're going to explode, because you're wearing shorts, so you can't see that
right,
your glutes are soggy, your hamstrings aren't separated. But yeah, that's the hardest thing, because that's the hardest thing as a coach, because you'll peak a guy and you'll nail it, even when you nail it, and then for a first show it's hard to nail with the guy, but he is dry and full, and they, because people they think they're going to turn into Ronnie Coleman or Phil Heath or Big Ramy in peak week. They think like, once I get some carbs in me, I'm suddenly going to be 300 pounds. And so they always have like terrible expectations. But you can give a guy win a show and he'll go and pig out, and then he'll send you pics in the gym the next day. Coach, we should have went on like this.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, you look great with overhead lighting. At the show, you got 70 rows of lights blurring any shadow. They're washing you out. It's like, yeah, I can see that cankles on you through your pants. I
right.
know this wouldn't look good on stage, but that's the hardest thing as a coach.
Yeah, no, I totally had that feel. It was kind of, just the difference between the two. And I also think, for me personally, or I'm sure for a lot of competitors out there, just have a better sleep strategy, because
Yeah,
I definitely failed on that, because you're not going to get great sleep, like, call it what it is, but I think I got maybe 2.5 3 hours, so I was definitely wired and probably way too much caffeine just to like get through the
Yeah,
day. That
and
also
even
didn't
worse,
help.
that like cortisol, that's flushing sodium. I mean, you're just burning through, so it's just, and you can't control it. And that's one of the weird things is like it's almost like what created the stereotype of the dumb meathead is the fact that the only people who can really go to the highest level in the sport are the type of people who are so laid back and we can't be bothered to stress themselves into a poor look. Like the
Right.
guys that you got to pull them away from video games to get them on stage. And it's funny because the worst thing you can do is know a lot in the sport, really. You want to work, you want someone else to know a lot and tell you what you need to know. But the more you know, the more you overanalyze, the more you you think about things you don't need to think about. And then worse, the more you stress, which is the one thing that will always make you look worse.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly the case why I reached out to you because I was, as I don't know if we said in this episode, but as I said in other recordings, I early 2000s, I coached a fair amount of clients, under Triponi Nutrition. So I know how to progress someone, and have done that. But I'm like, there's not a chance I could do that to myself because I just know too much. And I would just always think like, oh, I need to do an extra of this or an extra of that or
Yeah.
cut this. And I mean, there were days where you had more food than I expected. And then there's other times where you changed stuff up that I wasn't expecting. There was times where I was like, I think I'm probably gonna be doing 2 hours of cardio this week. And it wasn't, it was different.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so that's why you really need somebody who knows what they're doing to kind of reel you in, especially if you're, extremely driven and not afraid of hard work.
Yeah, it's just the sport has got to the point. And, you'll like some of the old guys like Sean Ray will, like kind of make fun of the fact that people need coaches now. And I love, that era was my era. That's what I, like grew to love the sport in. But and the physiques really did look good. But as far as like body fat and conditioning, they really weren't. Dorian Yates was the only one that was coming in modern conditioning. Half the top 6 of the Olympia wouldn't have a single line in their glutes. Some of them would have minimal lines in their hamstrings. It just wasn't quite. And then on top of that, with the growth hormone use since then, guys' skin, and I mean, this is a theory, but guys' skins are so much thicker that I feel personally like how lean I used to have to get a person in shape to win, like win, a USA's or nationals in 2004 is quite a bit different. It was not nearly as lean as today getting people in shape. And the only thing I can think of is that you have to just get such extreme low body fat because everyone's skin is so thick from the, GH use. Because back then, even if, even 2 IUs was costing you more than 100 IUs a day does right now. It's